Alright, YouTube, I am deeply disturbed to learn that the University of Vermont is currently flying the BLM flag. This is posted on WCAX. Sort of, we're small town America and we're also small state America. So our local media, the average nightly report here is cow tipping. Or, oh, yeah, the barn burned down on this road or something like that. Or somebody illegally logged off some pine trees. It was considered a great coup here years ago when a bunch of maple syrup was stolen. I shit you not. It was like a massive, massive incident, and everybody was completely up in arms about it. You're thinking to yourself, oh, well, that's Vermont for you. These people with these, all they've got is like cows and trees and stuff. It's actually worth millions of dollars, the amount they stole. It's some expensive shit. But, UVM has raised the BLM flag in solidarity with Black Lives Matter protesters. Now, let's analyze this from perhaps a more rational perspective than the average UVM admin can probably muster out of their tiny, dusty craniums. First and foremost, Vermont is almost a homogenous state. It's 98.6% white people. There aren't a whole lot of minorities here. And there's not a whole lot of oppression of minorities here. Gun crime here is a rarity. There are no significant urban centers to be blighted by the sort of stuff that goes on, New York City or Detroit or something like that. We don't have that kind of crap here in Vermont. This is northern New England. This is small town America. Our largest so-called city of Burlington is tiny compared to some of the outlying secondary metropolitan areas in any other part of the country, almost. Look at some so-called town outside of Houston or Dallas, still about the same size as our only actual major settlement. Here in Rutland, the metro area's got 25,000 people in it. The city itself has 17,000. And this is considered a pretty good development by Vermont standards. So, trying to pretend that a bunch of Vermonters in some way have any connection whatsoever to some ghetto in the inner city, or can stand in solidarity with them being familiar with their plight, is completely ludicrous. It just doesn't work that way. The only students seeing that flag who have any relevance to it whatsoever will be out-of-state students who unfortunately are now the majority at UVM because of Shumlin and other idiots in our state government not attempting to protect the sanctity of people from within our state to get a good education, to lower their costs, to allow them to compete. Give Vermonters affirmative action. Our only friggin' university is majority non-Vermonters. Castleton now's a university. I guess that'll be where the Vermonters have to go. Not a bad place to go, but it's right here in this county. I went there. Nicer than UVM, I will say. Better than UVM. Yes, indeed, even back when it was just a college. UVM is acting disgracefully. Another thing, I don't think people have quite considered this. BLM is essentially now a political movement. It's no longer simply an organic social uprising against police shootings. Has nothing to do with it. It's almost completely disconnected at this point from police shootings at all. You read the list of demands put out by one of their dime a dozen so-called self-proclaimed leaders, and it reads like a political manifesto. It's not a tract of social reform in any way, shape, or form. Half these people are just a bunch of anarchists and communists who go there to antagonize and cause problems. It's like Black Bloc. You have like a protest at the G8 summit, and everyone's holding signs and being peaceful. They're trying to reform things. Black Bloc shows up, starts shit with police, and then the police get to go beat some skulls. It works really well for Black Bloc and for the police, not necessarily for the protesters that were there in much larger numbers to begin with. We've seen this over and over again over in Europe, especially places like Spain or France or something like that. Here, we've got BLM. It's essentially the American answer to Black Bloc. That's essentially what it's become at this point. Half these people aren't even black. A lot of these people, in many of these cases, in Charlotte, the police said 70% of the arrests that were made were of out-of-staters. They weren't even from the state of North Carolina. So some of these people are living in some friggin' lily-white suburb or some barn out in the middle of the hinterlands of southern Virginia or some other place in this general region of the country, or maybe they came in from California for all we know. And they're going to pretend to know what it's like. Oh, I know what Charlotte's like. Oh, it was so great before all these evil police showing up in our streets cracking skulls. Meanwhile, it's the first time they've ever been in Charlotte. You look at Ferguson. How can UVM fly the flag of a group that sees no problem with a bunch of people looting and shooting and rioting and burning down black-owned businesses in a black neighborhood to take out their frustration at the police? How can you be so stupid? How can you think that that's going to help build a social movement that can even begin to hope for any form of reform? It's never going to happen. Now, from a libertarian perspective, I've said the same thing for some time now. The fundamental core issue, the disease, you're trying to treat things symptomatically. The disease is bad government and too much government. That's the disease. It's the only one that the country has. And it's led to every other attendant problem. Militarized police, you empowered government to create them in the first place. Inner city crime, why do you think those gangs are there? They're present because of the drug war. The drugs come along. Here's your border crisis. They come along from the cartels. And by the way, oppress the third world populations down there. I don't know if any idiot at UVM understands this. The people down there get oppressed. The drugs flow across the border. The border agents are basically toothless because, again, large government is so strangulating, so bureaucrat friendly, they can't even do their job because half of them don't even know what job they're supposed to do. The drugs come across. They get filtered out across the country. We're here in Rutland. We're a major crossroads for the drug trade, believe it or not. We're in the middle of nowhere in the mountains. We just happen to be at the very crux between four major metropolitan areas. Montreal to the north, the Albany-Troy region to the west, Boston to the east, and New York City to the south. So all the drugs going between these places, they're all coming through here. I wouldn't be surprised if half of the shipping trucks that I see are actually loaded with marijuana. Now, I don't care if people smoke weed. I say end the drug war completely. It'll wipe out inner city crime. It'll wipe out the cartels. It takes care of half of the humanitarian problems in Latin America that cause illegal immigration in the first place. Everybody benefits. But no, you'd rather talk about the symptom of, oh, the big bad police just shot a black man. What about here in Charlotte, where the cop is black, shoots an armed black individual, and you're flying the BLM flag? Now, why weren't you flying it after Tulsa? Why didn't you choose that incident? With Crutcher, who was unarmed, who didn't do anything wrong. He did literally nothing wrong. He had his hands in the air and everything. He was fully cooperative and they shot him. Why didn't you fly the BLM flag after that? No, you have to wait for Charlotte to do it. A justified shooting, most likely, involving a black police officer? And you're talking about how Black Lives Matter? What about the officer? Does he get his day in court? Or are you going to drag him through and lynch him in the streets in the court of public opinion? I'm going to bet the latter. I'm going to bet you're going to do exactly what you did during the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman crap, which I still see posted every time there's an infographic. Posted by some social justice warrior talking about how race relations and bad cops. They always include Trayvon Martin. That's funny. Zimmerman wasn't a cop. He also wasn't white. Oh, he was a white Hispanic. A term that you labeled racist, by the way. I can remember people referring to this when I was at UVM years ago. Oh, that's just a racist term. People make that up to try to play up to, like, the more Spaniard Mexicans in here so they can, gang up on the brown people or something. You used to call that a virulent form of skinhead bigotry. Now you've embraced the term because of one retarded trial, which was practically a kangaroo court. I'm still surprised that Zimmerman managed to get freed because the judge clearly didn't like anything about him. And you lump that in with police shootings. He wasn't a cop, just a fucking neighborhood watchman who got jumped on the job. And you're flying the BLM flag. Now, I thought UVM got money from the government. Now, doesn't that mean you shouldn't be really attempting to enforce in any way, shape, or form the political opinions of the students paying money to go there? The out-of-state students may mostly be a bunch of trust fund babies, but for all of the native Vermonters going there, it must be a little bit strange. Because when they leave the UVM campus, all they see is a sea of white faces. There's no inner city in the state of Vermont. It's homogenous. You pretending, you presuming that you know anything about the inner city, as though you've ever even been to one, other than maybe the time that you and your mama and dada went and got to stay at a 5-star hotel in New York City or something like that. It's crazy. You don't know anything about it. It's just like you talk about the border, you talk about the plight of the Hispanics, and everyone must hate evil Trump because he's against illegal immigration, or undocumented migrants as you now term them. I lived down there along the border, 5 minutes from it in fact. I have no fucking problem with deporting criminal illegal aliens. Not one. By the way, neither do most of the people down there because they don't want to compete with them. They're legal immigrants. And you still haven't figured this out, that there's a difference between these two groups of people. I lived down there. I could literally see Mexico from the backyard, if the land weren't so flat. It's kind of hard to see anywhere, honestly. You've got a barrier in front of you that's just an inch taller than your eyes. You can't see anything. There's no hills at all. You can stand back 100 feet. You still can't see over it. Up here where there's like mountains and hills and stuff, it's not that way. It's a little bit more, it's easier when there are mountains around. I can't even navigate on the grid systems of like southern cities. Oh, I had a terrible time trying to get around down there because you have to literally like look at the street names. There's no like landmarks sort of in the land that allow you to navigate. You put me in the woods, I can walk for 20, 30 miles and not get lost. You put me down in one of these cities, yeah, I'm lost right away. I don't have a clue where I'm going. Oh, we got to get to McDonald's. Where is it? I don't know. Here in Rutland, I can find anything. Down there, it's like, you've got 3 streets, and I'm completely blind like a mole. But Christ, you fucking fruitcakes at UVM running that school into the ground. Wasn't it the dean had to quit because his wife was like drunk and hitting on a bunch of students? I think I remember that. I think that was last year. It was funny because my high school principal, I'll tell a longer story about this sometime in the future. Showed up at a student's funeral. The student had died. She's like drunk and blubbering and like trying to crack jokes and stuff. She's completely wasted out of her mind. So she got canned. She wasn't a bad woman, but she made some bad decisions. I will say that. I didn't dislike her as a person. Thought she was very nice. Yeah, the school administrators, they done goofed. In UVM's case, it's basically the same way. The BLM flag, in the middle of New England, in some, literally, what's a small town university campus? It's not real. Burlington is not really a city by the standards of the outside world. I'll tell a little anecdote here. When I was going down to Texas the first time, I took Greyhound. Now, at the time, I was too dumb to realize I could fly for the same cost. I thought, I get a student discount 10% on Greyhound, so I'll just ride a bus all the way down. Which meant that I didn't sleep for 2.5 days on the way there, and I didn't sleep for 2.5 days on the way back, and ate almost nothing in that whole period of time. It was difficult. Worth it, but difficult. But when I went down there, the old Greyhound station on the south end of Burlington was in what you could consider by Vermont standards to be a little bit of a seedy neighborhood. There's a couple closed businesses, old industrial sort of area, some of those row homes that, they're not exactly upper middle class or something like that, just a little bit run down and shabby. And when I walked through there, I said, I don't know, the aura here feels a little bit intimidating to me. It had nothing to do with, like, before anyone jumps down my throat from UVM or anything, has nothing to do with race. All the people there are white, too. It's just, it looked shabby. Looked a little bit run down. The new Greyhound is in the airport, which works a lot better. A little bit of a nicer area, although really loud. They got those F-22s or whatever, F-35s or whatever they've got there that caused so much debate anyway. Went down, got my tickets, and of course I depart on Greyhound. I go down to Texas. Now, on the way to purchase the ticket, I thought that area was run down and a little bit intimidating. By the time I got done on Greyhound going through such wonderful places as St. Louis and Dallas and Oklahoma City and Springfield and all of these other places, I can't even remember half of them. I think I went through Atlanta, actually, on the way down there, which was funny. I've got stories to tell about that. The Greyhound trip alone is worth a novel. It's just insane, especially in Dallas when the bus broke down. It was really funny. By the time I got back, I realized, oh, this neighborhood's like living in Eden or something. Before it had looked shabby. By the time I saw all of those real inner city areas and actually got to see them, I said, wow, this isn't shabby at all. It's like literally, Richville or something like that. Millionaires could live here as far as I'm concerned. No intimidation at all. Even the worst areas here in northern New England. I don't care how many meth heads there are, how many pill poppers there are. I don't care if there are prostitutes on the corner. I don't care if all the homes have chipped paint and are half destroyed. Still looks better and has less crime than some of the nicer neighborhoods in the inner city that I saw. So you're going to sit here and tell me, sitting in your lily-white university, in your lily-white state, in your lily-white region of the country, that you have any conception of what it's like in the ghetto because you listened to an Eminem CD once, or you're a Dr. Dre fan, or you listen to Drake or Lil Wang or any of these other crap artists. Yeah, you really know what the ghetto's like. It's like we have a region here in Vegas. It's what the locals call it. If you don't want to be seen as an out-of-towner, you don't call it Rutland, you call it Vegas, where the party never ends because the party never began, honestly. We've got a part of the city called the Gut. It's on sort of the west side towards West Rutland. And it's sort of the mafia hangout. Yeah, the literal mafia, as in, there are drug lords that live there. There are a lot of meth heads. There's a lot of dope dealing. I saw some of this myself in the past. I was associated with a person who was basically a middleman. Just marijuana, small amounts, not even really a criminal charge unless you get caught distributing it, because it's decriminalized here. Nobody really cares. They're more worried about the pill poppers, trust me. Anyway, that area, yeah, it's a little bit run down. It feels like you've kind of gone back to a shabby area in the 70s or something. You expect somebody to come out with a disco ball and start snorting a line or something. Still looks better. Trust me, still looks way better than some of the nicest areas, especially around Arkansas or Georgia. Those parts of the country are completely blighted. Oklahoma City, my Christ, you wouldn't believe how run down it is. How you can almost smell the crime before you even enter the city. You can see it from a mile away. Oh, it's going to be a little bit dicey. And so when UVM, which is in an area that experiences, the most major crime they generally experience there is, somebody was smoking weed. Somebody dropped acid. Somebody had a bag of mushrooms. You're going to pretend that you know anything about the ghetto, anything about the plight of black people, when 99% of the people in the area are white, when I think about 90% of the people on campus are white, most of the rest are Asians, either immigrants or of Asiatic descent within this country. You know anything about the ghetto? No, you don't. You don't know anything about it, just like you're completely clueless on the border. Why don't you take it from somebody who actually lived there? I did. No problem with Hispanics. The food was way better than here in New England, trust me. That's why when they said Syrian refugees were going to come to Rutland, I said, I hope they open a restaurant. It'd be so much better than, some of the slop that we're fed here. The only place in the whole city that's any good to go to is the Yellow Deli, that or Taco Bell. By the way, Taco Bell's really popular down along the southern border. You may not imagine it. Well, why would anyone eat Taco Bell? They can get, real Mexican food. Yeah, it's tastier, but Taco Bell's still popular. So yeah, UVM's flying the BLM flag. It's just complete stupidity. Please, tell me that you're not taken in by this crap. You don't know anything about the inner city. Most of you people. If you're from out of state, you probably come from an upper middle class suburb, because otherwise you can't afford the tuition at UVM. If you're from in-state, you were raised in a homogenous state. You don't know anything about the inner city. Not one goddamn thing. So when you fly that flag, in a way, kind of disrespecting the black community, because I don't see you down in fucking Atlanta. I don't see you in Charlotte going down into the ghettoized part of the city ruined by their government to go rant about social equality or anything like that. No, I see you picketing and whining here in Vermont, where you don't have any problem because you're doing so. Because you don't happen to be standing at the time that you're doing it in a gang violence-filled part of some massive inner city with a population far exceeding that of our entire state. So, don't give me that crap, because it's not going to fool me. That's about all. Peace out.